Oh boy, what is going on, everyone? Welcome on into the Check Your Brain podcast. My name is Tony Mazur. Thank you for checking out the show on the major platforms such as YouTube, Rumble, X, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. And if you enjoy the show, there's plenty more on Patreon at patreon.com/Tony Mazur, TonyMazur. I do have a limited amount of free content over on Patreon, which includes this episode, as well as yesterday's, which recap the 6 months since the assassination of Charlie Kirk. The rest of it, the good stuff, usually about 4 episodes per week with all the saucy, taboo subjects and naughty language, it's all behind a paywall for as little as $3 per month. Not per show, $3 a month at patreon.com/Tony Mazur. Subscribe today. Or don't, doesn't matter to me. Anyway, let's get to the show. So today is March 11th, 2026. It marks the 6th anniversary of the beginning of the COVID madness. We all woke up to news on March 11th, 2020 of the coronavirus, but with addendums attached, as we had seen for the last week or two prior, that, hey, it's probably a good idea to wash your hands more often and probably a good idea not to touch your face, like during normal flu season. But then when you awoke 24 hours later on March 12th, you found out the world was shutting down. The world was ending. The world that you knew no longer existed. As if we entered a new, what's that called? Oh, a new normal. Yes. As if there was a crossing of the Rubicon moment, which did happen. That crossing occurred sometime late afternoon, early evening on March 11th, when we found out that America's greatest actor, America's dad, Tom Hanks, contracted the coronavirus. He's over in Australia filming an Elvis movie. He's playing Colonel Parker, and we found out that he has COVID-19. Remember that Elvis movie? Yeah, you don't, do you? I don't either. I remember seeing a preview of it on one of the streaming services, and I said, "Oh, that's the Elvis movie they shut the world down over." Did you see it? No? What about you? No? I didn't see it either. It's funny how that works. But we shut the world down because Tom Hanks got the sniffles. And they shut it down indefinitely. They said 15 days to flatten the curve, but if you're in the liberty movement like I am, we knew it wasn't going to be 15 days. They shut down sports leagues, the Arnold Expo in Columbus, Ohio. They shut down the schools, put them on an indefinite spring break. Then they shut down the parlors, the salons, the gyms, the bars, the restaurants, everything. I mean, except for the weed dispensaries and in the liquor stores and the big box stores like Walmart and Home Depot. They stayed open because, but your local restaurant that you loved so much, you went to for decades, that had to shut down, and chances are it probably didn't reopen. We had to do all of that. So that was 6 years ago. And I know I'm going to have people in my comments saying, "Tony, my God, it's 6 years. You're still talking about COVID? Really, dude? We're over that. We're on to other crises. Don't we have like 82 new wars since that?" And I'm like, yeah, I understand that. But it's important that we go back in that time because while we are being inundated with war propaganda right now with Iran and regime change and the Ayatollah this and Ayatollah that, understand that war propaganda was also applied during the COVID time. So, kind of like with 2026 as well as 2003, we applied that same war propaganda to fighting an invisible enemy. Rather than a brown guy with a turban, we're talking about this invisible enemy that could kill us all in SARS-CoV-2. So I want to go back in time a little bit, recap that, go to the present, see what has changed, and look ahead to the future, and then apply it to what we are seeing now in the world in all these years later. So let me share this here. For you people only listening to the audio, I'm going to describe this. This is more video, but it's a series of photos from the year of our Lord 2020 and how insane we all went. So let's start it off with the baptisms. You brought your baby to baptism, and the priest, who's wearing a hospital mask, has a water gun and is squirting holy water onto the child. Oh, yeah, all this stuff happened, by the way. This isn't AI. We didn't use Sora or Grok or Claude or any of these other LLMs to make these images. I'm sure probably down the road people are going to say, oh, that was AI. That didn't actually happen. You're whitewashing history. No, this happened. People wore hazmat suits to the grocery store. They put their mail in the toaster. They washed their groceries. If kids had to go back to school in the fall, they had to wear masks all the time, but you still had music class. So you just cut a little slit in your mask to play the flute or the saxophone. Insanity. That was 2020. Let's go to 2021. Remember the vaccine propaganda? That if you don't get vaccinated, you can't do this, you can't do that. You were shunned from polite society. Oh, this is a good one, by the way. So again, if you're only listening, I'll comment on a couple of these. If you're watching, you can see all of these, and I'll comment on them. Lori Lightfoot, the bug-eyed, fish-like Beetlejuice mayor of Chicago at the time. When, by the way, we also said that if you get rid of her, the heir apparent is going to be much worse. And he has Brandon Johnson. You would love to have Lori Lightfoot back. But here she is, basically threatening Chicagoans for not taking the vaccine, which is kind of interesting because a lot of them are of African-American descent, and they were very skeptical based on the Tuskegee experiment and stuff like that. But here she was, Lori Lightfoot in 2021. To put it simply, if you have been living vaccine-free, your time is up. If you wish to live life as with the ease to do the things you love, you must be vaxxed. This health order may pose an inconvenience to the unvaccinated, and it, in fact, is inconvenient by design. Yeah, how about that? So they were purposely making your life difficult, that you could not participate in polite society without taking this experimental drug. Let's keep playing. Oh, that's a great one. Piers Morgan, who is, let's be honest, Piers, I don't know if he's actually a boomer, but he is a spiritual boomer. And he has changed his mind all these different times and likes to, quote unquote, platform different people. But here he was, May 18th, 2021. People who refuse to get jabbed but whine about lockdowns are really a selfish breed of stupid, selfish pricks. Special breed of stupid, selfish pricks. Okay. I guess he's one of the few who has actually kind of apologized. He's walked back his comments. I think it was only him and maybe Arnold Schwarzenegger are the only two people who publicly came out, massive public officials that said, or figures, I should say, that said, yeah, maybe we did go too far. Yeah, you know what? I've learned, and I realized that my words 5 years ago were not very good. I appreciate that, but that's not good enough. I love that one. Gene Simmons kisses Gene Simmons to anti-vaxxers and unvaccinated. You are an enemy. Wait, what? I forgot what was that one? So nearly half of Democrats, what? Nearly half of Democrats say fines, prison time appropriate for questioning vaccines. That's January 17th, 2022. It's just a hair over 4 years ago. They wanted you thrown in jail, concentration camps, because you didn't take this experimental jab. I love this one. I think I still have this on my phone somewhere. It was some guy in Canada. Of course, it was Canada. My position is we must make the lives of the unvaccinated a total misery and just keep escalating the exclusions until we crush the resistance and break their spirit in order to force compliance and so they learn not to resist government mandates. These are the people, by the way, again, Canadian, but these are the people who are holding up, no kings! We don't have a monarchy! No kings! We must resist! But people were resisting 5 years ago, and you said, no, you shouldn't resist. You need to listen to the government. The government, of course, knows what's best for you. And then a bunch of, I don't know if these are hospital workers. I don't know what this is. Could be an op, a false flag, but these are four people holding signs that say, screw your rights, force vax now, kill unvaccinated, take their kids. These are people who still walk among us. So if you are still sitting there going, okay, Tony, it was 6 years ago. What's the big deal? You're still talking about this? My God, man, why can't you just move on? This is why I don't want to move on because these people still walk among you and I. These people who think that because I didn't take a certain experimental gene therapy in my arm, and I can finally say that now because YouTube and Google has finally loosened the, relaxed some things, although I wouldn't doubt I'm dinged for something in this episode. People holding signs that say, screw your rights, force vax now. And then those are also the same people who say, no, nobody ever actually forced you to get vaccinated. No one ever forced you. They just only threatened to, to fire you and to take your kids away and to ruin all of your life and exclude you from all of proper society. But no one held you down, strapped you down to a board, and shoved a needle into your vein. Semantics. Force vax now, kill the unvaccinated, and take their kids. What are you going to do with the kids? What? I've seen what some of you lunatic lefties like to do to kids. But that's again, this is why I'm still talking about it because I didn't forget. They may want you to forget, or they may want to whitewash that whole era as, oh, it was just a minor inconvenience. We were just inconvenienced for just a couple of weeks. It was a couple, okay, maybe it was a year. Okay, maybe it was like 2 years. Okay, maybe it lasted sometime till around October 7th, 2023. But guys, come on. That didn't happen. I saw a number of those posts in the years since of teachers saying, I'm trying to get through to my kids that we didn't actually shut the world down. They're so convinced that we did, and it never happened. Except it did, stupid. I'll play a little more. Oh, I love that one. That came out. I remember the exact day. It was October 31st, Halloween of 2022. And it was was it the Atlantic or one of those rags that are no longer relevant? And it said we should declare a pandemic amnesty. Interesting, right before the midterm elections of 2022. They said we should have a pandemic amnesty. Guys, we all said and did some silly things the last couple of years. How about a truce? Come together. How about a hug, man? Oh, I thought we weren't supposed to hug because, germs. Well, are you vaccinated? Well, what does that matter? People are contracting the virus and giving it to other people regardless of vaccine status. Almost as if the vaccine didn't really do anything other than a lot of negatives. At best, it seems like the vaccine was nothing. It just who knows? Maybe you didn't get sick. Maybe you got a little illness after getting the shot, and then you moved on with your life, and you haven't had any problems yet. Or you could very well be a ticking time bomb and did experience some health issues, which I'll get to in a little bit. But amnesty? Oh, no. No, that's going to be a big no from me, dog. No amnesty for all this. So let's go back in time, remember what some of those images were like. This is from I assume maybe a Hallmark store or a CVS or Walgreens. Oh no, this is Dollarama. It says section closed. This is again Canada. What is going on, Canada? You Canadian people, please. I'm not saying that I don't know, maybe pull for Alberta or Manitoba to join the United States because you guys are done. Section closed. This is greeting cards. Section closed. Ontario provincial regulations dictate that this 4-foot section does not contain essential items. Therefore, these items cannot be sold at this time. And then they also have it in French here as well. So yeah, no, the section does not include anything that's essential. That only essential people and essential workers that need essential items can purchase these essential goods. We had to tell people who was essential and who wasn't. Who's to say who's essential and who's not? Okay, so you make your living playing guitar at a nightclub on Fridays. Well, that's not essential. You know who is. A 32-year-old radio producer in Akron, Ohio. Apparently, I was essential. I never missed a paycheck. Never missed a paycheck. Always had a roof on my head, over my head, and food on my plate. But I wasn't the lucky one. I was the lucky one. There were a lot of people who weren't as lucky, and we had to crush them because they were not essential. Then you had other really sad situations like, oh, I want to see my grandkids. Well, you can't see them because COVID, but I want to hug them. Okay, well, we made some contraption where you are going to enter this force field of plastic bags where you can hug your kids outside.
It's only you that's going to use them.
It's only you going to use them. But you've got to put your arms through the bottom one. Yeah? So your
Sounds like Tommy Robinson.
arms are through the bottom one. Okay? My arms go through the top one. And
Now, I've talked about this before. My grandparents at the time were elderly in their 80s, and I'm not stupid. I'm not going to go see my grandparents if I'm coughing. They were freaked out. They watched CNN all day. They bought into this propaganda. And sadly, my grandma didn't make it out of COVID because she had a number of health problems and we didn't get a chance to see her. She refused to see us. Person I was very close with, talked to a lot, was completely indoctrinated by Dr. Fauci, the Faucian propaganda that we had seen, and said that her and my grandfather, not my actual grandfather, but her husband, that they had heard that if somebody has coronavirus and coughs outside, that it can swirl up to 9 to 12 hours outside. And we asked, where did you hear such nonsense? They're like, oh, we heard it somewhere. And they believed it. And that's what they did. They put out a bunch of misinformation to these people while saying, hey, maybe it's a good idea to go outside and get some fresh air. That's misinformation. What are you, a doctor? Telling people they should get fresh air and sunshine? How dare you say that they should get off their couch and get some exercise? Listen to us. Sit on your fat ass and watch Netflix and listen to us. Buy your Dr. Fauci bobblehead. And my grandparents believed in that. So I didn't get a chance to see her that much. I saw her twice in her final 2 years. Once at my wedding where she was frightened. I have photos of her going like, oh my God, I'm going to die. And once again after she had taken several jabs. And then she died not long after. And it sucked. But again, I know not to go to some elderly person, even to this day and even before 2020, not to go up to them while I'm sick because I could infect them. Everyone knows that. But if I'm healthy, I would love to see my grandma. And I wasn't able to because she bought in. And a lot of people bought in, sadly. And that many of them passed away. And you weren't allowed to have a funeral. You had to socially distance and do some celebration of life. Well, George Floyd can have multiple funerals in multiple cities with thousands of people. But you couldn't because you're not one of our moral betters. You're not one of the good people here. So then let's get to 2021. The vaccine propaganda popped up. It was Bill de Blasio. It's weird that there's a worse mayor of New York right now in Zoran Mamdani. But let's go to not this communist, the last communist they had, Bill de Blasio, whose real name is Warren Wilhelm, but decided to change it because, I don't know, it sounded exotic in New York City. Here he is flexing on everybody by saying that he got vaccinated and was rewarded with a delicious burger and French fries.
Free fries when you get vaccinated? I got vaccinated. You're saying I could get this? The delicious fries? Wait a minute. But there's also a burger element to this?
It really was a let them eat burgers and fries moment. Forget cake. It's let them eat Shake Shack. Boy, that really enticed me. I couldn't wait to roll up my sleeve so I can get a burger and crinkle cut fries from Shake Shack. How much does that cost? I know Shake Shack is more expensive than other places, but I don't know. A $12, $13 burger and fry combo as opposed to potential lifelong health issues. Gosh, I don't know. Boy, I got to weigh that out. Which would I rather have? Would I rather get vaccinated and get a burger element? Burger element. That really should be the name of the podcast, but no, it's 6 years to flatten the curve. 2,191 days. Boy, is this just really exemplified that entire era. This person here says, my biggest flex is that I refuse to let satanic pedophiles inject me with a poison in exchange for a cheeseburger and fries. And it wasn't just cheeseburger and fries, Krispy Kreme donuts. And I argued with coworkers. I've probably brought this up before, but bear with me here. New listeners, new viewers. I had a coworker I was arguing with about this. And I said, guys, we're noticing already that the COVID is affecting old and fat people, like people with diabetes. Yet we're luring them to get vaccinated with probably the most fattening thing you can put in your body, which is a Krispy Kreme donut. And they're like, well, but if that's enticing people to get vaccinated, we could get out of this. I didn't last much longer at that station. I also lied to them about my vaccine status. So, oh well. And then, of course, this is from Newsweek, August 25th, 2021. Are you unvaccinated? It's time to make an end-of-life plan. Did you get vaccinated? No, you didn't get... Okay, then do you have a living will? You should probably get your affairs in order because this Newsweek opinion columnist said it's probably a good idea that we should all get who's going to get the house, who's going to get the car, who's going to get the cats and the dogs and this and that. What about... what about the stuff I have in the living room? That's kind of expensive. I've got autograph jerseys and everything. What should I do with the? Oh, well, those will go to Tommy and this will go to Terry. And really, an end of life plan. Coincidentally, August 25th, I think it was right around the time I actually did get COVID. So I wasn't vaccinated. I got COVID. And here I am 5 years later, healthy as a horse, still doing an episode for you. So that's just a little bit of a look back as to where we were back then. Now, understand, though, they told us this stuff was going to happen. They told us. That's why when you heard about the term plandemic, we had heard as early as 2019, it was around September, October 2019, that they were getting their affairs in order for a potential pandemic at some point. They probably just needed, I don't know, maybe to uncap the vial and see what we're going to go from here. So here's a collection of them. I don't remember who's the fourth guy, but there's Bill Gates, Dr. Fauci, Barack Obama. Here they are just years in advance predicting potential, who knows? So there could be a pandemic, there may not be.
If anything kills over 10 million people in the next few decades, it's most likely to be a highly infectious virus.
If we get an airborne pandemic, if we haven't built ahead of time some structures to deal with this, millions of people could be adversely impacted.
But also there will be a surprise outbreak. The next administration, that there's no doubt in anyone's mind that they will be faced with the challenges that their predecessors were faced with.
Pandemic prevention and preparedness is going to end up being, whether the administration likes it or not, a priority, a top priority.
Trump is now president. When he faces his first major epidemic, as his predecessors have, he will likely project his impulsivity, xenophobia, and cavalier attitude towards facts to over 52 million followers.
We may yet again have another pandemic, and it is almost inevitable that we will have another pandemic.
Welcome to Event 201.
Of what's looking like it will be a severe pandemic.
A new coronavirus.
Why don't we blow the system up and then say, hey, everyone in the world should get this new vaccine we haven't given to anyone yet?
But it is not too crazy to think that an outbreak of a novel avian virus could occur in China somewhere. We could get the RNA sequence from that and print those vaccines on a patch and self-administer.
So it's kind of interesting the years that they talked about this. The first clip, that was in chronological order. Bill Gates at a TED Talk in 2015 about this. And all of a sudden, Donald Trump becomes president. And then in 2017, 2018, 2019, it's like, guys, there's going to be a pandemic. I think there might be, got to be prepared for such an occasion. And then you go, oh, and then it happens. And it just so coincidentally happened the year of a presidential election during a lightning rod president in Donald Trump, that every morning it was a fireside chat to see what he was tweeting about. And people were waking up to notifications just to say, here's the Orange Hitler Cheeto. They didn't want him to be president anymore. They tried impeaching him. That didn't really work. So it was like, well, what's plan B? Plan B is shut the world down over the sniffles, essentially. How about this one? Here's an interesting revelation of late. The Epstein files had been released, kicking and screaming. Dan Bongino, Kash Patel, Pam Bondi, they all told us, there are no files. Okay, maybe there are files, but they have some redactions to it. But stop talking, stop asking questions. He killed himself. Okay, well, but we have no video. Oh, wait, maybe we do have video, but there's a minute missing, and we got to play with stuff. Here's your stuff. Why are you still talking about Epstein? Don't you understand the Dow Jones is at 50,000? Yeah, they bungled that. You said, well, what about the Biden administration? Because they're all complicit. It's just when you run on transparency and then you get in there. When all of them ran on the transparency of the Jeffrey Epstein getting to the bottom of his influence, whether it's on Middle Eastern intelligence, United States intelligence, all of this, we had to get to the bottom of all of this. It just doesn't smell right. All of his connections. Then they get into office and they're like, what files? I don't know what you're talking about. So yeah, that's why a lot of us were really upset and very disappointed, in many ways betrayed by this current administration. But we found this one out. Interesting timing. March 20th, 2015. To Jeffrey Epstein from Bill Gates and the World Health Organization. Please find attached a draft agenda for the meeting on preparing for pandemics as requested. Let's discuss next steps, for example, how to officially involve the WHO and the ICRC, co-branding. Best regards, and I hope we can pull this off. Thank you from Bill Gates to Jeffrey Epstein. So it's weird that Epstein died supposedly in August of 2019. Yet 6 months later, that's when the pandemic started. Yet he had his hand in probably planning a pandemic. He had his hand in the overthrow in the Maidan Revolution in 2014 and with Ukraine. He had his hand in Iran-Contra. He had his hand in this and that and so many other things. But boy, that old Jeff Epstein, that New York financier, happened to be everywhere, wasn't he? So we're finding out stuff that we knew this stuff was going to happen. They were saying it out in the open. We just kind of weren't putting two and two together at that point. So then you get to a point where they say, yeah, maybe we kind of over-exaggerated the impact of this. We said it was going to be basically like Ebola. That, remember, in 2014, actually right not far from where I'm at, there was an Ebola outbreak, which was one person had Ebola. And they're like, oh my God, we got to shut everything down. But we didn't. We got through it, and we were fine 2 days later. They were getting ready for it, but they had to make it seem like if you got COVID, that was a death sentence, that you better start, again, planning your living will. Get your affairs in order because you are going to die if you're not vaccinated because this virus is dangerous. But we knew that after the first wave of it, it's going to weaken, like other coronaviruses. And here's somebody who says that, yeah, they did over-exaggerate the deaths.
And what Dell said is completely correct. The definition was changed to be PCR test positive at any time and death at any time, and then it was ascertained to be death due to SARS-CoV-2 infection. And in our National Center for Health Statistics, of the 1.2 million Americans who died PCR test positive, half of those records have no mention of pneumonia and no abnormalities on chest X-ray or CT. None. So right there, you can take that 1.2 million and cut it to 600,000. When carefully adjudicated, and this has been done in a few regions in the United States.
Wait, I thought we were going to cut from 6 million to 271,000. Anyway.
The answer is of real COVID deaths, it's about 10%. In the United States, there's a paper from Italy where it's 3% of deaths. So in the United States, the most broad estimate would be 120,000 deaths. A bad flu season could be 70 or 80,000 deaths. And as Del mentioned, because COVID, when that was test positive, it drove the hospital reimbursement. Influenza testing was essentially not done.
Yep, absolute corruption.
That's what happened.
Well, yeah, wasn't that funny? You would bring that up to people and say, gosh, it just seems that, the flu deaths went away, the flu wave. What happened to the flu wave? And they're like, well, that's just because people are masking and social distancing. So, well, wait a second, though. At the same time, the COVID rates have shot up. Well, that's just because people aren't masking and social distancing. And they would look at you without a hint of irony. Yeah, they over-exaggerated it. And the deaths, let's be honest here, it wasn't perfectly healthy guy. Everybody had some anecdote that they knew their cousins, boyfriends, father-in-laws, grandfather, or whatever, had perfectly healthy, walked 6 days a week, used the treadmill, and dropped dead of COVID, and we should all be sad and lock down the world. I had a buddy of mine tell me, I have a kidney problem. I have this cyst on my kidney, and it's probably beneficial to shut the world down. So I'm like, so we shut it down for you, not for all the healthy people. How about you? How about this? If you want to lock down, you lock down. Not me. I'm healthy. I'm in my 30s. I still go to the gym. I'm still pretty healthy. You need to lock down that. Don't make everybody else participate in this. But that's what happened. A lot of baby boomers said, you need to shut down because you need to think of my health without thinking of the children's health. But I'll get to that in a little bit. But yeah, they over-exaggerated because we knew who was dying of this. We knew it was older people. It was fat people. It was old fat people. No offense to them, but it was usually COVID was what pushed them over the edge. They all had about 3 to 4 comorbidities. They had diabetes, they had cancer, they had, so many different diseases riddling their body that COVID just pushed them over the edge. They have dementia and Alzheimer's, and they also got COVID, so that's how they died. And then all this death certificate said COVID-19. Died from COVID or of COVID. If you got hit by a bus, I know many of you use this example. There were people who got hit by a bus or shot, and they're dead, but they just so happen to have tested positive on some PCR test for COVID, and it would say COVID death. So yeah, of course they over-exaggerated. The people who died were sick people. Sad, but it wasn't these perfectly healthy people who just get the sniffles and then drop dead tomorrow. Who was most affected? It was young kids. Talk to many parents, and they say their kids still in 2026 are behind developmentally. Research, COVID lockdowns may have permanently damaged children's brain development. New study reveals how government-imposed shutdowns robbed kids of crucial social skills. Now, who could have predicted that? Except for yours truly, college dropout Tony Mazur, who was a radio guy at the time who moonlighted doing stand-up and tournament softball. Who could have predicted all these doctors, everyone wearing a lab coat on the news, and would sit there 6 feet apart on the news desk and say, guys, we need to all band together and do our part and stay separate and stay home. It could save lives. And then these kids who weren't really learning that much in school anyways were forced to have a tablet and a computer in front of their face for 2 years, many of them in 2 years. Not all. Some people went to school, but then they distanced them apart and put plexiglass barriers on their desks. A lot of remote learning. And then these kids who were at the most impressionable time, let's say kindergarten, or how about this? They'll go even younger. Let's say a 2-year-old. 2-year-olds need to see facial expressions. They need to read that stuff to know that, oh, is mom mad at me? What's going on? Instead, when mom is wearing a mask, okay, honey, make sure you got to put your mask on. Put your mask on. No, we keep our mask. I know you're crying, but we have to do our part because boomers want to enjoy life and steal more of our money. That all happened, and there's no apology. There's no hell to pay. I'll get to that in a second with Rand Paul. But here's the thing. Why did they do all of that? It's because it was a test. The World Economic Forum, the WEF, those creepy lizard people that we've heard so much about, the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab and all of them. There have been significant developments in the last 5 to 7 years on social, environmental, and technology fronts that could help realize my carbon initiatives for shaping the future towards smart and sustainable cities. Specifically, to mention 3 developments in this context. It only has the one. The first one is COVID-19 was the test of social responsibility. A huge number of unimaginable restrictions for public health were adopted by billions of citizens across the world. There were numerous examples globally of maintaining social distancing, wearing masks, mass vaccinations, and acceptance of contact tracing applications for public health, which demonstrated the core of the individual's social responsibility. COVID was a test. It was a test to see if you're going to abide. Are you going to submit? Are you going to, because then we're going to have a social credit score, right? Oh, did you go out and play cornhole with your friends in April of 2020? Well, we're going to have to dock you a couple of points. But did you wear 9 masks on your face while you were in the shower because you didn't want the spread of COVID going to your significant other? Well, then maybe you bumped up a couple of points. Did you call the police on your neighbor for having a party in November of 2020? Well, then you're going to get a couple of points while we dock them points. You think this is all BS, right? No, it's not. None of it is. It was a test. And the problem is many people failed. You realize most people don't want safety. Or no, they don't want liberty. They want safety. Or at least the guise of safety. They want the feeling of my government is protecting me from all the bad people and the bad images and the bad messaging. Good luck with that, believing that. But there are people, and there are people among us right now, people that you are related to, people you go to school with, people you go to church with, people you work with, people who pass by you in their cars still in March of 2026 wearing masks. I saw a couple today. They're the people who are lost and they just have not bought in. So it's a shame, but it was a test, and many, many of them failed. The one good thing I would say about COVID is it kind of blew the lid off and it kind of ruined the media that so many people actually did go to real news that they weren't listening to. Well, they were listening to podcasts, but it was probably the biggest ratings that CNN had had in years, and they haven't even come close to them since then because people wanted to know, like, hey, I wonder what Don Lemon's going to say. Hey, the Cuomo brothers are up there, and there's Chris Cuomo with his brother because his brother has a big schnoz. That we have this massive Q-tip because they're like a, it's like watching Sandler and Young or Gallagher and Sheen, not that Gallagher, but the Marx Brothers' uncle. So Mary Catherine Ham talks about this. She says, the moment, well, she's responding to somebody saying, every single word of this column, a fantastic column by Peggy Noonan, I fear sometimes that few people really care about journalism, but we are dead without it. Someday something bad will happen, something terrible on a national scale, and the thing we need most, literally, and it just goes on and stuff. And Mary Catherine Ham says, the moment was COVID. It happened. Almost every journalist in the nation failed to relay reliable information, instead succumbing to panic and the widest spread daily curtailment of civil liberties in my lifetime. The rare figures who didn't were silenced or stifled or removed. We saw that with Joe Rogan. Rogan's like, yeah, I'm kind of by myself all the time anyways. I go elk hunting. I'm going for a jog. Just so happened to get COVID. I had a doctor friend of mine prescribe me ivermectin. We can say that now. That word used to get banned on YouTube. That my doctor prescribed me ivermectin and I'm getting better. And instead, what did CNN do? They grayed out his face to make him look like he was on death's door for refusing to take the shot. I mean, again, we all went through this. The media said that Donald Trump told people to inject themselves with bleach. He did not. He also didn't say there were good people on both sides. He didn't say there was going to be a bloodbath if you vote for him. He did not say maybe we should take syringes and put bleach in them and inject that, and maybe we'll be better. What he was talking about was, could sunlight, if you're exposing yourself, if you're sick to sunlight, could that be could that bleach out the virus of COVID? And they all said, he said inject bleach. You morons, you absolute friggin' morons. I'm trying not to curse in this podcast, but you people are morons that believe that. But yeah, the media's behavior. Just honestly look back at that era and see people still wearing masks at that time by themselves. And of course, everyone in media who was a reporter or something, they're on TV with their mask on and it says, are we clear? Okay. And then they take it off. They had to do it for the cameras because people were going to complain or something. It really ruined the media, and now they're not to be trusted. So now, they're wondering, what's it going to take? What's it going to take? Well, sorry, we're not going back to those days. And I've said it on many other podcasts, but again, bear with me. If Joe Rogan ever decided to stop doing his podcast, ending his deal with Spotify and saying, you know what, guys, I've done this for 17 years. I put out enough content. I'm done. My voice is hoarse. I kind of want to move on to other things. Do you think the listeners of the Joe Rogan Experience are going to move back to traditional media? No, they're going to go to more extreme people. They're going to say, Joe was too moderate for my taste. I'm going to find that, what's this, Check Your Brain, Tony Mazur? Yeah, I'll go with him. I'll check him out this time. That's what's going to happen. People are going more radical. So your idea of trying to control the news, like Larry Ellison and Barry Weiss with CBS, that's what we're going to do, is we're going to infiltrate the news with Zionist propaganda. That doesn't work. It may have worked 20 years ago, but it's not working now. And really, the media, is there a need for some type of journalism? I guess. But in the days of AI and TikTok and fast-moving videos, I don't really see it as a viable option to try to save. So there you have that. Was there hell to pay? Well, there wasn't.
Is anyone going to pay for the COVID thing? Is that ever going to happen?
We're not done, and I will bring Anthony Fauci back in. We finally discovered the records as to who determined that the money went to Wuhan. They have resisted me for 3 years. Robert Kennedy has helped me get the records. So has Jay Bhattacharya. This week or next week, I'm going to begin interviewing the people who were on that committee. We're going to find out what was the debate, what was the discussion, what were the arguments for sending it to Wuhan, what were the arguments against it, who made the arguments, and then who ultimately had to sign off on this. It is our belief that Anthony Fauci had to sign the document. We haven't found the document yet because it's either been hidden or destroyed.
Yeah.
We're going to keep it, and there will be hell to pay.
Turns out there wasn't hell to pay. That Anthony Fauci is still walking among us. Dr. Birx still walking among us. Everyone who shut you down. What's that weirdo's name that doesn't want to debate Joe Rogan because he doesn't want to give him a platform? What's his name? Peter, Dr. Hotez. That's it. That Muppet-like creature who's been pushing vaccines for years. They don't want to debate. And they're not going to have hell to pay. No one's being held responsible. None of this. Whether it's for Epstein, whether it's for all the ridiculous wars we've been fighting for 20-something years. You could say, that Trump and Obama and Biden and Bush, they have this presidential immunity now, but no one's paying for anything. Who's paid for anything? Other than Dennis Hastert, the longest-serving House Speaker, because he had some horribly inappropriate things with the younger person, and Rod Blagojevich went to prison. That's about it. Everyone else just seems to continue walking. They inflict this pain on the American people, and we just shrug our shoulders and say, well, them's the breaks. So, Anthony Fauci won't have hell to pay. None of them will. Until maybe after the Trump administration, then they'll lock up Pete Hegseth or something. Here we have this is in outside of Chicago. So because in those years when Biden was president, decided to bring in like 30 million new people who are not from here, who do not really care about our country. U.S. healthcare executive Anash Ahmed arrested in Serbia for $300 million COVID fraud scheme.
Right now, police say no one is in custody.
And the former Loretto Hospital executive who's accused of defrauding the federal government of nearly $300 million has been arrested in Serbia. Anash Ahmed, who was CFO, is part of a group accused of using stolen patient data to bill $900 million worth of bogus COVID-19 tests. Ahmad fled the country following his indictment, though. Court documents just filed yesterday revealed that he was captured back in November. He remains in Serbia, but prosecutors want him extradited here to face charges.
Right now, police say no one is.
Yeah. So it's a foreigner, $300 million COVID fraud scheme. Does he face consequences? Does he get exiled? Does he go back to being extradited and back to living over there? I don't know. We'll see. But it turns out that it happened all over the place. As we've learned in Minneapolis, that all these leering centers and all these Somali, it turned out there were shell companies for fraud, and that they were labeling basically all of their children as autistic just to get funds from the government and participating in also a lot of COVID fraud schemes. This was going on. It continued going on up until probably the end of December. And then it was, if you pointed out you were racist, like that old Nick Shirley, he ain't a journalist. He did better journalism than any journalist that I've seen in years. Tell you that much. So that's all continuing to go on. Then there's long COVID. Remember this one? You don't really hear much about this, but it still goes on in some pockets of the internet, especially Reddit. There's like long COVID Reddit threads of people like, actually, I'm experiencing some problems right now, but it's because of the long COVID, because people weren't vaccinated. Or did you ever think that maybe your long COVID is actually a vaccine injury? I don't know. Long COVID may be triggering Alzheimer's-like changes in the brain. Interesting. That's funny how that works, right? So, yeah, you're long COVID. You're vaccine injured, and you don't want to admit it. Because then that would mean your cognitive dissonance is really triggered in saying, but wait a second. I was told safe and effective. I was told that if I take this, everything's going to be good. But those people can't be wrong, which means I can't be wrong. So no, it's got to be something else. It's got to be from that, because I got sick that one time and I'm experiencing 5 years later the effects from this illness that lasted 3 days. Okay, keep believing that. Whatever you want to tell yourself. The vaccine wasn't a vaccine. I remember it at the time, where Robert Redfield actually went out there and said, you're probably better off wearing masks. That's probably a better preventative measure than a vaccine, because what we were told, the term vaccine meant you're cured. You take this, you're either cured from it or not going to get it. That's why we kept hearing about therapeutics for AIDS, HIV and AIDS. Now they have PrEP. But we had heard all this for years about HIV and AIDS, that, we don't have a vaccine. We just have some therapeutics to get you through it, and you're going to stay alive. You're just going to linger for a lot longer. Well, isn't that what what COVID should be? No, it was, if anything, it was a therapeutic. I don't think it was even that, but they shouldn't have even called it a vaccine in the first place.
The problem is not the science of creating the vaccine. The problem was the public policy and how to use the vaccine. The vaccine should have never been mandated. It wasn't never meant to prevent transmission. It didn't prevent transmission. Probably was a misnomer to call it a vaccine. It's really more like a medicine. It doesn't stop infection. Children should have never been vaccinated. People shouldn't have been mandated to be vaccinated to go to school and work. So the policy side was totally misplayed, okay? And I know the vaccine came out on the 14th of December, and I was out of office on January 20th, so unfortunately I had very little influence on the policy. But I did argue that it should be a vaccine that we should use for the vulnerable. Put it in the nursing homes, put it in assisted living. Don't mandate this vaccine. Didn't belong in children. So a lot of overreach. And as a consequence, the mRNA was a new technology. It hadn't, we don't know all of the potential negative consequences. I'll say this briefly because I see the timer. When I give you an mRNA vaccine, and I've talked to the FDA and others about this, when I give you an mRNA vaccine, I don't know how much spike protein you make. I turn you into a spike protein factory. I think the FDA should know how much protein do you make. And I don't know how long you make it. I think we ought to know how long do you make it. And I don't know the volume of distribution of it in your body. I think we should know all of those things.
So it wasn't a vaccine, but we decided to go ahead and call it. Where were the people, though? And I understand. People were threatened that, yeah, we can come right out and say it right now. We overreacted with COVID. The lockdowns were probably a mistake. In fact, they probably caused more psychological and even physical harm than if we just stayed open. Yeah, the vaccine rollout wasn't even a vaccine in the first place. Yeah, we could say that now in March of 2026. But in December, January of 2021, you couldn't say that. You were afraid you were going to get shut down on all the platforms. They banned the president simultaneously off of every single platform because they thought he was ushering in an insurrection, which of course wasn't true. But if you were to say all the way well into 2023 about COVID, you were getting dinged on your Instagram or your YouTube page, that you couldn't say certain things. You had to say the I word instead of ivermectin. You had to be coy with it. So people were conned into silence over what we were seeing. And I don't know, was not a good time. But people abided. And yeah, again, I would have liked to have heard it at the time. There were a couple of freedom fighters. And I think what Robert F. Kennedy did was truly heroic. You may think he's a lunatic. Yeah, sure, he's snorting cocaine off of toilet seats back in the day. But he was right on with this. So they're one of the few people who have not disappointed me in the Trump administration so far. So then you have this one. This is crazy. There were women who were trying to have children at that time, but they were kind of afraid of taking this experimental gene when they're pregnant, because who knows, it could cause some complications. Well, it turns out 270 women got pregnant while participating in the Pfizer vaccine trials. Only 36 pregnancies were recorded. The other 234 were lost. Over 80% of pregnant women lost their babies thanks to this vaccine.
Told women in the study not to get pregnant. Nonetheless, 270 women got pregnant in the study, vaccinated women. Now, 234 of them, the records of what happened to that pregnancy were lost, which is illegal. Pfizer is supposed to follow them through pregnancy. However, of the 36 women who gave birth, over 80% of them lost their babies. Over 80%. Pfizer knew that. One of the most chilling things in the Pfizer papers is something called a pregnancy and lactation report. And I told women in the study not to get pregnant.
So these people still walk among us. We're still trying to find out what happened with JFK and the JFK files. And people will say, well, the Warren Commission, a lot of those people are already gone. Well, good. I mean, okay. We can hold these people accountable now because this happened again just a couple of years ago. But stop talking about it. The only things we can go back in the past are talking about something that happened over 150 years ago or 80 years ago, but not 6 years ago. What? What are you talking about? Women wanted to have kids. They're in these, which I got a victim blame here and say, if you're pregnant and you decide to join a Pfizer vaccine trial, you were asking for something like this to happen. Sorry. Again, not to victim blame, but you were asking for it. This is wrong. This is absolutely wrong. And no one's been held accountable. All those deaths. How about this one? This one should be massive news, but it's not. A former Chicago White Sox pitcher is suing the team, alleging he was coerced into taking the COVID-19 vaccine and that the shot left him with a permanent atomic nervous system disorder that ended his career. Autonomic, I should say. Isaiah Carranza, drafted by the White Sox in 2018, says the team officials warned he would be blacklisted from professional baseball if he refused the 2-dose regimen. According to the lawsuit, minor league baseball players faced the mandate while major league players did not. MLB players had union protection. Minor league players allegedly had little leverage and risked losing their careers if they refused. Shortly after receiving the Pfizer vaccine, Carranza says he developed extreme dizziness, nausea, near fainting, and a wildly fluctuating heart rate. Team staff reportedly dismissed the symptoms as dehydration, anxiety, and rookie nerves. Carranza's attorneys say the condition permanently damaged his autonomic nervous system and ended his baseball career. They estimate his future medical costs could exceed $557,000, with lost wages ranging from $3.4 million to $19.9 million. The lawsuit also highlights the broader debate around workplace vaccine mandates that swept through professional sports, universities, and corporations during the pandemic. Meanwhile, compensation programs set up for vaccine injuries have been widely criticized as slow and difficult to access. Out of more than 14,000 claims filed, only 133 have been deemed eligible for compensation. Carranza's case attempts to pursue accountability outside the system through the courts. The White Sox have not yet publicly responded to the allegations. So yeah, you think about all the people, the Aaron Rodgers refuseniks. What about the people who were coerced into taking it? Because if you don't, you're going to be working at Lowe's next week. If I don't take this, the team will get rid of me. They'll cut me, no matter how talented I am. I will go and work a normal job. Now, I think there's something noble about someone who would walk away from that. But I also feel for people who did not walk away and said, guys, it's either I can provide for my family and risk having some kind of real problem with my body, or I stand up for myself and my principles and work a normal blue-collar job. It's tough to say that I would feel one way or another, but I as somebody who did refuse, I'm grateful every day. I see these stories and I say, it sucks, but I'm glad my company at the time said they didn't have a mandate. They just knew everyone was willing to roll up their sleeves because there are a bunch of Democrats who work there. And Joe Biden was president, and Joe Biden said, hey, Jack, get the vax. And they all did. So they didn't really need a mandate. So I just told him I got vaccinated, and I didn't do it. So, I don't know. Is there a statute of limitations? I don't care. Whatever. Honestly, what does it matter? What did it matter, my employer, 5 years ago? Who cares? So it's going to be interesting how that works. Final thing I wanted to mention, because, again, it was mentioning about the war propaganda that we're seeing right now in Iran, and that we need to fight them over there. Here's the other big one that I've seen is short, because gas prices just shot up like 80 cents. It's, it's short-term pain for long-term gain. Gain for who? For whom? Not me. What, because I'm afraid the mullahs are going to attack me in Ohio? No one's afraid of that. No one cares. No one under 40 wants this war. I'm telling you that right now. But they're using the same propaganda. Well, if you don't support this war, it means you hate America. You hate the troops. Well, we saw that 6 years ago. Oh, if you want the country to be reopened, it's because you hate your fellow man, because you want to kill grandma. It's the same thing. Just sub out one thing after another, and it's the same playbook. It's the same rubric over and over and friggin' over again. It's 2003 all over again. It's 2020 all over again. The same stuff. We just, again, swap out the terminology. I just thought this was kind of interesting. This was Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She had a climate activist who worked with her who admitted that during the lockdowns of trying to get the carbon down, everybody's stuck in their homes and the carbon still didn't really go down enough. So she's kind of admitting that it was all just BS.
You slipping something at like a drunk wine night turn into this complete breakup.
So the timeline is that I was at Now This from 2015 to 2021. And so I was there through the COVID stuff too. And I was visible. I was an on-camera person the whole time I was there. So the whole world shut down. At the peak of COVID, it was something like 17%. We saw a 17% reduction in our carbon emissions. The peak of COVID. Mm-hmm. So that's just those 2 weeks. Over the year, it ends up being something like 5% reduction. And I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, the climate movement wants 100% reduction in our carbon emissions. What is it going to expect of our society?
Yeah, we're literally locked in our homes, not doing anything.
And we still have carbon emissions. And so that was the first moment where I go, hold on. I don't know if I want to live in a world where we have zero carbon emissions because I'm kind of depressed right now at home. This sucks and we have no freedoms. And so what does the climate movement, if you take it to its logical conclusion, it's not going to be no big deal. Like it's going to require people to give up their freedoms to like lower carbon emissions. And so that was one thing. And then the other thing was I was very anti-plastic, and all of a sudden like the PPEs everywhere, the masks, the plastic barriers between every table at a restaurant and when you're checking out your food at the grocery store. And I'm like, wait a minute, I've been sweating about a single-use plastic straw for the past 5 years, and now we've proliferated more plastic in the last few months than I've seen in my lifetime. And also looking around, we seem like we're fine. It looks like our society was able to absorb that plastic and the world has not ended. It's like we don't have time for nuance. We just have to push for the most extreme narrative because this is a fire alarm situation and the planet is going to be destroyed. So
okay, so it goes on. That's the point of progressivism, is you don't stay at the same spot. You don't just soak it in and go like, hey, we got gay marriage. Isn't this great? Nope, we got to move on next. Because you got to keep progressing. You got to keep moving, move the goalpost. And that's what happened during 2020. It's you got to stay home, you got to stay safe, you got to wear a mask, you got to social distance, you can't do any of that. And then it was go get vaccinated or else you hate grandma and blah, 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 blah. And then they moved on, and they moved on, and they moved on. Notice that it was in 2022. It was like, oh, we got to support Ukraine. Yeah, Ukraine. What about them Ukrainians? Then by the summer, it was forced birth, Roe versus Wade. Oh, my goodness gracious. Women are being forced against their will to have children. And then it was what after that? It just moved on to Dylan Mulvaney and transgenderism and Trans Day of Visibility on Easter. And then we moved on to the attack on Israel on October 7th and what's going on in Gaza. And we moved on to this and then No Kings and Tesla. It's constant because people don't know what to say. So the media has to tell them, hey, this is what you're going to pay attention to this week. Okay, good. I'm a sponge. Fine. Sounds good to me. We're just reactionary to what the media wants us to talk about. And now, right now, it's March and media, especially the Fox News types, the neocons, boy, are they just having erections for more war. Lindsey Graham, I mean, I assume he's just touching himself every time he's on Fox News talking about more war and expanding it into Turkey and other places. You go, my God, what? What are you doing? But that's what's happening because that's war propaganda. And we used war propaganda in 2020. But again, instead of brown people with turbans saying Allahu Akbar, our enemy was this spooky, invisible virus. That's how we were able to get people to shut down. You can't scare people on September 11th like terrorism because, oh, that happened in D.C. and New York. What's the big deal? I'm living here in Iowa. What's the big deal? You know how they can do it is the invisible enemy. So they had to use that same old Baghdad Bob propaganda and move that into the COVID times, which they did. And people fell for it. A lot of people. And in fact, still to this day, people will fall for it. At the mall today, I saw like 10 masks. We're still doing this. 6 years to the day when we shut everything down. We haven't learned. Many of us haven't learned our lesson. A lot of people have. A lot of people became very based, especially after noticing that, hey, I can't do anything. I can't have a funeral, but George Floyd and his gold casket can have several. And you told us we couldn't go outside unless we wore like 9 masks if we're walking our dog. But you're encouraging people to riot in the streets over George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Jacob Blake and Ahmaud Arbery, whose name almost is literally armed robbery. You want us to go out in the streets because health directors said this. Racism is a deadlier pandemic than COVID-19. And yet there's no retribution. There was no, as Rand Paul said, hell to pay. There was none. They're still walking among us. We're still going through it over and over again. That's why I'm continuing to do this podcast. Hopefully, one of these years, I can do an episode like this and say, good news, guys. Anthony Fauci is in prison. Anthony Fauci is in an orange jumpsuit behind bars, and he'll be there the rest of his life based on what he did to this country, to this society. But I don't think it'll happen. Hate to black pill. There's some things you can white pill about, but boy, you want to talk about retribution for war and for COVID time? That ain't going to happen. They'll skate free. They'll get jobs on certain boards and have speaking tours and do all this and not really have to worry about anything. And then possibly get a presidential pardon. Who knows? Well, that's enough for today. That's enough for this year. I'll be back with you next year with another COVID episode, but for the rest of you, I'll be back with you, or most of you, I'll be back with you next week with another free episode of the Check Your Brain podcast. And the Patreon people, I'll do a bonus episode for tomorrow for you. And then after that, the next main episode will be coming up for you on Wednesday. Here of the Check Your Brain podcast, patreon.com/Tony Mazur. Thank you, everybody, for checking out the show. Tell a friend, tell several friends, and have a good one. Stay safe, wear a mask, social distance, and go F yourselves. Bye.